Hello again, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Fun and Games Podcast. I'm Jeff Moonen.
And I'm Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And you're listening to episode 107. And this episode, we are joined by Lucid Tales' very own Emile Brodeur. Emile, very nice to have you on the show today.
Thank you. I'm super glad to be here. It's a pleasure to spend some time with you guys.
It's very exciting. I met Emile through the incredible folks at GIG, the E3 gig specifically. And it was fortuitous that I'd also seen a trailer for his company's brand new game. So Emile is one of the founders of Lucid Tales. Lucid Tales, of course, their upcoming release, Sally, which is really exciting. I guess, Emile, let's start by telling folks a little bit about Sally. Tell them a little bit about this debut title from your company.
Yeah, it's Sally is kind of a challenge because it's a game that we tried, in which we try to do something really different. Mm-hmm. So the quick pitch would be, and I think it's an article from PC Gamer that described it that way, and it's Animal Crossing in House Moving Castle. So that's kind of a really good way to quickly explain what it is. So it's a game centered around social simulation, a bit like Animal Crossing, except you've got much more depth to the interaction with the different crewmates, which are kids, just like you are. Well, kind of preteens.
Right, yeah.
So, yeah, that's kind of how I would explain it. So, basically, the whole game revolves around community. So, that's the central theme of the game. So, every decision that we make is toward community, except it's a single-player game. So, instead of other players, you've got really, really strong AIs, I would say, like really thick, advanced AIs.
Very cool. I love that. And so I know you're still in development, and there are probably a lot of things that you can't answer, but are you going to create your own character, your own kid that you're going to play as? Or are you playing as a kid in the world that exists as part of this narrative?
No, it's absolutely, you create your own character. We're actually going to release a video soon about it. I don't know when the podcast will be out, but I think they might be around the same time, actually.
That makes sense.
So yeah, there is character creation. That's kind of one thing that was really important for us, because self-expression is one of the center pillars of the game. So where we can have self-expression, we love to have self-expression, basically.
I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It is a very evocative trailer, and yeah, that sort of elevator pitch. I was like, yeah, no, that it's very Animal Crossing kind of feel, especially the catching and the sharing of the animals. That your viewpoint character in the trailer catches a frog and shows everybody. And
it's very cute. I love the way the characters, especially the kids, interact feel very childlike. Just observing my own nephews and nieces as I grow up, and they grow up, I got a sense of their movement felt very organic, like actual little kids, jumping up and flailing their arms. It just felt very childlike and wonderful. I really dug it. Let's talk a little bit about Lucid Tales. You are the co-founder. Talk a little bit about the origins of Lucid Tales and why you wanted to start a game company. It's not often that we have co-founders on the show, and so it's exciting to talk about the beginning processes. Where did Lucid Tales come from? Have you always wanted to make games?
I wanted to make games for a while now, but basically I started making games as a hobby, like most people, I guess. Mm-hmm. Using RPG Maker VX Ace, which is one of my favorite softwares. I haven't touched it since a while, but it's a really, really fun software. So I started doing that as a hobby, and then I kind of took some time to work full-time on that game. Spoiler alert, it never released. I never finished it because it was way too big, but I really had a lot of fun. Because basically it was an RPG.
Right, sure.
Naturally.
And yeah. And so I would make these levels every week and update the game. And I would have a group of friends that would test it right away. So I kind of had a smaller scope experience of having a live game, which was really my friends really overplayed the game. I've had friends who've put hundreds of hours just grinding their characters and stuff. So that was really nice. And then I was supposed to go in anthropology at university. And I was actually waiting for my spouse. And then instead of going both into anthropology, we actually both went into separate branches. So she went into teaching and then changed afterwards, etc. And I went into video games instead because I was like, hey, that seems fun. I could make a living out of this. And there's a new program that just opened that actually one of my friends, Nicola, which is also a co-founder of Lucid, he just finished his bachelor's degree there.
Wow.
So I kind of joined, and then that's kind of more my personal journey. But we all met through university, and we kind of dug each other really fast, and we made some project prior to making Lucid Tales. And then when we kind of wanted to start Lucid Tales, me and another co-founder, Louis, took a program, like a summer program in specifically businesses, like indie businesses in Montreal for video games. So it was really, really specific, but it helped a lot to like understand, okay, what do we want to do as a business? And that's kind of when we decided we didn't want to do like a regular Inc. and we wanted to do a worker cooperative, which is a whole other challenge. We try to do things really differently. We try to try different stuff, and being a worker cooperative is one of those elements, basically.
Well, how does a worker cooperative differ from your usual top-down kind of game studio?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So basically, a worker co-op is, as you know, much more horizontal, but there is still room for leadership and responsibilities and kind of hierarchical structures, except those are elected. So how it works is that as a co-op, we elect a board, and then the board makes the decision for the business, but they can still ask all the workers for their opinion. They can still like ask for votes even. So basically they're in control of how the co-op works, but they are elected and they have short kind of 1 to 3 year terms, and they can be reelected. So they can't screw up, basically. They have to like represent the workers as best as they can, and they're also workers too. So like it's in their best interest to do things that will benefit the workers.
Absolutely.
And it's kind of crazy that it's a wild idea, but the idea is that the people making the thing get to decide how they do the thing. That's basically how I see worker co-ops, and it's apparently super radical, but it is the idea, basically.
Yeah, no, there's I think a lot of times if people think about how video game studios work or how video games are made, images of crunch and 18-hour work days and all of these other wide gulfs exist. And there's a completely different studio in Montreal that I think a lot of people think of when they think of something like that. And I'm talking about Ubisoft. I'm not being coy.
Yeah.
No, there's no reason to be coy about it.
I'm not being fucking coy here. I'm talking about Ubisoft. And I've heard of a few other studios that do similar things. So this is the first time I've heard of it being called worker cooperative. Is that a specific business designation in Montreal, in Canada? Or is it just that this hasn't happened often enough?
Yeah. So basically a worker cooperative is one type of cooperative.
Okay.
And co-ops are a legal entity, basically. And they work differently. You can still be worker-owned without necessarily be a worker co-op. I know, especially in the States, it's like a legal nightmare to be a co-op. Here in Quebec, it's kind of great because we have a lot of good laws towards co-op and we're kind of lenient towards them.
Yeah.
But I know in the States it's harder. So a lot of co-ops, they make an LLC and then they shape their bylaws around co-op bylaws and the 7 cooperative principles, which the listeners can look up because I don't know that.
Should. I know I will after we're done talking today.
Yeah, it's there are a few worker co-ops in the world. I think that I know of. There's about like 20 tops in games, of course.
Yeah.
There are other co-ops in other spheres, but in games, it's a small number because I guess we're a young industry too. So
yeah,
sure. I mean, comparatively to other media, games is still the youngest and will be for a while, I think, until we create some other kind of entertainment that we haven't even conceived yet. But that's future talk that we don't want to have.
I can't wait to be curmudgeon-y about it.
Right, exactly. That's the natural evolution, right?
Yeah.
So obviously, Emile, you're a fan of video games. Obviously, you grew up playing games. Let's talk about your early gaming life, because I love what that leads into. Now, I'm going to take a wild guess and assume that RPGs played a prominent role in your early life. But talk about like some of the first consoles and games that you owned and like what really piqued your interest in video games.
I'm born in 1994, which means that I kind of grew up with a NES. And a Nintendo 64. My father was a big gamer, so we kind of all had we had all the consoles when they. If it was not the year, it was the following ones.
You stayed up to date.
Yeah, basically. At least with one console at a time. But my earliest memories are from playing NES with my cousin. Played a lot of Nintendo Entertainment System. We had these cartridge of there's 100 games in a single cartridge.
Oh yeah, I remember those.
Yeah, played a lot of Mappy, which is a game in which you play a little mouse that tries to fool cat by closing doors on them. It's a really, really fun game.
Yeah.
And yeah, so that's my earliest memory. Then I moved to Nintendo 64, and surprisingly enough, I'm not a big fan of RPGs.
Oh really?
Yeah, it's kind of fun because the game that really that made me want to make games is Dark Souls, the first one.
Sure,
wow, yeah.
And the whole series, basically. So my RPG... and Pokemon, of course.
Of course.
I don't really like RPGs except Pokemon,
Everyone
which I
loves
played.
Pokemon, it's fine.
I played way too much Pokemon and doing semi-professional competition stuff.
Oh, cool.
Nice, yeah.
But essentially, I think the console I played most was the original Xbox. The original Halo, Hitman, the second Hitman, which Hitman is one of my favorite series of all time, which is it's kind of funny because I did play a lot of gritty, edgy games like Halo and I don't want to make those games ever. I played Dark Souls and I really enjoyed making something Souls-like as a hobby, but I don't think I would ever go for that aesthetic anymore. It's interesting how things go.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that makes sense. I feel like the stuff we grow up playing either influences us or pushes us towards other influences, right? I grew up playing the Metroid series and I grew up playing Zelda, pretty much all the big Nintendo series, as far as especially, and then beyond to other things when other consoles came out. But Nintendo dominated a lot of my early life. I was born in the 80s when all of those other consoles didn't exist, before your time.
Yeah.
But I think it's always interesting. Jeff and I often talk about how some games influenced our tastes and grew our tastes, and other games pushed us towards other things and showing that they were possible. And I think that's what's great about gaming is that there's such a wide variety. I just feel and I guess it's easy to say this, but I feel like gaming has a larger variety of genre than any other media because the intricacies are so much wider and so much broader, and the hours you spend with it are so much larger. And I think that's really interesting.
Yeah.
Of course, if someone heard that one of the creators of Sally loves Souls-like, they'd be like, I don't understand. How is that possible?
Yeah.
But to me, I see that through line because something really gritty like that would push you to, well, okay, I like playing that, but I want to make the opposite of that, which I think safely we can say Sally is definitely the opposite of a Souls-like.
We are large. We contain multitudes.
Yes.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I feel like I would love to eventually, we've talked about probably making a horror game somewhere down the line because we kind of like doing that. Also, as a creator and as someone who plays games and wants to make game, it's kind of important to have a variety. And I don't want to make 16 Assassin's Creed. That's not what
of course.
Yeah. I don't want to make this same game over and over. And of course, I'm saying that, and then Sally will be successful, and we'll have to continue to make content for Sally for 10 years. But
DLC, something's wrong with the ship, and all the lights are out. I don't know.
But yeah, I really want to make different things. I really want to make a spiritual successor to Cameo,
sure,
which was a really cool game. There's a few things I would remove, combat was not I don't want to make combat. It's complicated. There's already too many combat games. But yeah, Cameo was a fine game in my opinion.
Yeah, and great for the time.
Yeah.
But it also sounds like a lot of the games that you grew up enjoying and the ones that have really stayed with you, regardless of how the combat worked or anything, they sound like rich worlds or ones that require a lot of exploring and choosing your own path.
Yeah.
One of my favorite things about the Hitman series is getting to like at the start of a mission and going, I can come at this from like 18 different ways. Oh my God. And the Souls games, yeah, dodge roll, get good, but there's so much lore in everything you find and everything you pick up. So I still think even if Sally doesn't have any combat in it, the DNA of those games kind of show through because, again, I only have the trailer to go off of right now, but it feels like a game of exploring, not in a dungeon crawling kind of way, but in learning about who you are within the collective and the people around you.
Yeah, that's exactly right, actually. And yeah, like we talked earlier about self-expression and what's really strong in Hitman and the Souls-like genre is self-expression. You've got a lot of ways to either approach a mission or build your character, so that essentially shapes how you play the game. And that's something that as a gamer is kind of my favorite thing ever. Like, don't tell me what to do. I don't want to be told what to do. I have a problem with authority. So just give me a lot of options, which is why my favorite game ever is Breath of the Wild.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because there's actually no limits. There's nothing. You want to climb that? Like, I remember my first playthrough, I was like, okay, I want to go to the Zora Domain, and I took the worst road ever, but it was my choice, so it's my worst road. And it's kind of great. It's really, really fun.
My first time playing it, I think I was at like a concert with some friends, like friends' band's concert. I was helping work the merch table and like he had a Switch and it's like, oh man, I need to play the new Zelda. I didn't know anything. I'm like, I'm going to climb everything. Can I do it? Yeah, it's not a good idea. Shh, don't tell me what to do. It's just your stamina runs out, but I could get up there. Yeah, well, I'm going to get up there. And I did. And I was hooked. So I
mean,
feel
Breath of the Wild is one of those games that I will always say it's not by anywhere near close to my favorite Zelda because it's not necessarily what I'm looking for in a Zelda game. However, it is the best video game experience I've ever had for exploration. My favorite thing about that game is every time you turn it on, if you pick a direction, you'll find something, whether it's a shrine or one of the stupid seeds that there are way too many of, or like a town. Bugs, weapons, food, like it doesn't matter. Even if you've beaten the game, there's still stuff to explore for so long. And like that's something I've never gotten from a game since like Skyrim. And I think Zelda does it better because it's just it feels more fanciful and more engaging than a Skyrim would after the first couple of playthroughs, because Skyrim is more overwhelming because there are quests and there are missions, and Zelda doesn't really do that to you.
And you're the same character every time, and there's the same end goal every time, but how you assail that, how you go about it, and what you do in the meantime creates an incredibly rich narrative.
Yeah, I mean, a sense of wonder is what I'm always looking for in a game. Like, I love games that tell me what to do if I'm playing a kind of game that I want to do that. But any game that can make me sit back and go, oh, wow, is a game that will stay with me. And that's why Breath of the Wild is still one of my favorite games, even if it's not my top Zelda game, because it gave me an experience that I don't think any other game can give me. In the same way I love the Mass Effect trilogy. Like that first time when you experience Shepard and their way of interacting with the world and develop those relationships. Like I'm playing through the Legendary Edition now and I'm romancing a Tali, who I'd never romanced before, and she's delightful. And like her whole story on Rannoch in the third game is a completely different way of engaging with it when you're romancing her, because she talks to you differently and engages with you differently. And those kinds of wonderful moments and exploration and shock and awe will always bring me back to games. And what's exciting about Sally to me, based on just what you've told me, is that there is a sense of wonder. I mean, when she finds that frog at the beginning of the trailer, like she gasps, and that gasp is so visceral because we've all had that moment where we're like, oh, like we get excited because we see something, and you translate that so well. And I'm looking forward to building on that kind of excitement and wonder in this game. You know, it just seems like the kind of game for that.
Yeah, I'm really like, because I can't spoil too much.
Of course.
Mostly because, you know, we're still making decisions on the day-to-day as to what Sally will be,
right,
in more minute details, right? Mm. But yeah, it'll be, at least making the game will be an exciting adventure, and I hope playing the game will be an exciting adventure as well. Like, I'm not worried about any like development problem. We've got a pretty solid team. We're 5. But yeah, I'm not worried about like actually making the game. We've got a lot of like smart people on the team, so that's not my my biggest worry. I'm curious to see what the game will become and to see how people react to the development of the game as well. I'm really curious about that.
Speaking of exploration and development, I wanted to ask a little bit about Lucid Tales' YouTube page, which is the main link from the company's Twitter as well. So you are doing a devlog, Dev Tales, of the development of Sally, as well as there is a series called Game Dev Pantry exploring some of the designs and development ideas of games that came before. Was the idea of Game Dev Pantry kind of exploring these things before you got started on Sally? What's kind of the story behind all these?
Yeah, so basically we wanted to create tutorials for Unreal Engine 4. Because we the 3 of us have a bachelor's degree in design in games. So we knew that we could also supplement that with a bit of like, this is why they took these design decisions. Probably, that's our guess. So we decided to create content so that we could share what we learned, basically. But it also was a good practice for the upcoming devlogs, because it was kind of always planned that we wanted to make devlogs at some point. We didn't know like what shape or form that would take, but we knew that we wanted to talk about Sally for in the future, basically. So when we started Game Dev Pantry, we were actually already working on Sally, at least on the conceptual level. So yeah, it is a kind of an out there marketing solution, I would say, to like have a YouTube channel and stuff. It is not common. We are trying things, and I'm curious to see like where does that lead. I know a few developers had successful devlogs, so yeah, I'm curious to see how does it work for us.
I mean, I personally, as someone who has played games a long time, love to know how the sausage is made. I'm always fascinated by it because it's magic to me. Like, I understand how development works and programming works on a functional and intellectual level, but beyond that, it's magic to me. It's a different language. You know, I don't understand it. Even to the point, like, I have a ton of amiibo. You put the amiibo on the thing and it does a thing. It's magic. Like, I know that there are microchips and that there are certain things that make it happen, but like, I don't know that through line. And so whenever I can get information on how we get from point A to point B, it's really fascinating to me. And it's going to be fun for me as someone who was already excited about Sally before I met you that night to now know you and be able to follow its development, because there aren't a lot of indie games where I've gotten to do that. We talk about Everyone Take a Shot. We're talking about Shovel Knight again. Every time I talk about Shovel Knight, like, I loved Shovel Knight, but I discovered Shovel Knight after the first expansion campaign came out. Like, I didn't follow Yacht Club. I didn't know their development. And like, I'm following their stuff closely now. But like, a lot of my most favorite indie games, I found out about them through word of mouth after they've come out. Sally is one of the few things from the Wholesome Direct where I saw it and went, that looks cool. I don't know what it is, but it looks cool. I love the design. And then to meet you right after was just kind of so fortuitous. And so the fact that you guys have a devlog, I think, is really great. And also sharing your influences, I think, is really great, because the whole point of the show is to share conversation about games and like show that it's so approachable. I hate the idea that people like, oh, only true gamers can play games. It's a whole lot of horse shit.
Bullshit.
It's crap. And like
it is.
Just like I say that if you play a game on mobile, on PC, on Mac, it doesn't matter where you play games. If you play games, you're a quote unquote gamer, for whatever the fuck that means.
Yeah.
And I think things like a dev log for Sally brings people in on a ground level that you can't always find an easy way in for. Like, your trailer is something I want to show my spouse who doesn't play a lot of games, because she'll look at that and go, oh, this looks cute. This feels like something I might play, you know, and I appreciate that kind of openness from gaming. I'm curious, since Sally's in its early stages, and obviously this is the focus of Lucid Tales right now, do you guys have a plan, other ideas percolating? Like, I imagine, like any other creative, you have 1,000 ideas at once, and you want to make 1,000 games. Is there something that you personally would be excited to make after Sally? This doesn't have to be related to an actual existing idea, but is there something that you're just really excited to kind of try after Sally is out and in the world?
Yeah, a lot of stuff. So some of us have personal projects on the side. Sure. I did some prototyping for different projects. I did design some board games, but also games that are board-like, I would say, but that could go really well programmed into a computer, like card games and stuff. But, as I explained earlier, my one thing that I would love to do is, it's really a spiritual successor to Cameo, but remove the combat, remove the hypersexualized teenage girl protagonist.
Yeah. But explore that world.
Yeah, so basically it would be a Metroidvania. And instead of power-ups, you would unlock the different monsters, right? And it would be all about exploration and kind of open puzzle solving. So a bit like the shrines are in Breath of the Wild. So the whole gameplay would be discovering the world and solving emergent puzzles, I would say, with your different sets of characters. That would be one of my dream games, would be to make that game.
That's awesome. I love that.
Yeah, I actually started a prototype and I streamed it for a bit. So I streamed myself working on the prototype for a bit. And yeah, it's something that I know is really doable, that I have the skills to do, and that I would love to do eventually. But it's, it takes time, it takes resources.
Sure.
And also, I don't want to impose my own, because that's really my project. Of course, it would become not only mine with whatever team I work with, but it's I wouldn't impose anything on anyone ever. So.
Understandable. But is Lucid Tales working in such a way that after Sally or whatever else, other members of the cooperative can bring in ideas like that, personal projects, and go, hey, let's vote on this. Do we want to make this our next big push?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways that we thought about how we could make projects after Sally. Because, there might be still maintenance required for Sally. So maybe some people will stay on the game, or depending on first of all, can we ship the game? That's the first question.
Oh, yeah. Gotta get the first one done.
But afterwards, is the game successful? If it is, do we want to create more content? Because it'll be a really emergent and really systemic game. So once we have those systems in place, creating content will be kind of easy and also really beneficial to the whole thing. So yeah, that's another maybe. And also we thought about either we create smaller games, so in kind of a longer game jam form, or I don't know, a month of game jam, and then we create something and then we go, okay, is that cool, is that not cool, and we continue. Or as we said, hiring people, pitching our projects and stuff like that. So there's a lot of unknowns at this point.
Sure.
Of course, there's still we still got plenty of time ahead, but it's something I keep in the back of my mind. It's something I know that we have the skills to accomplish in the team already. So I would be really curious to see where that leads.
Something that I really love asking, especially indie developers, as me and Jeff have no secret about how much we love our indie games, is what's you were part of, as I recall, Sally was part of the Wholesome Direct. Is that correct? That's where it premiered. So we're, Sally, of course, we're all excited about here, but let's talk about some other games. Were there any other games that you saw in the Wholesome Direct that you're that's a game I want to play? Or even on the broader, more AAA stuff? Are there games during E3 that you saw trailers for that you're oh man, I'm so excited? Because Jeff and I talked during our E3 presentation at length about Coromon, which is a Pokemon kind of style game, and then a few other indie games that we saw. But was there anything that you were really excited about that you saw oh, I want to find out more about that? Yeah,
well, there are games that I'm okay, I need to play this. And there are games that I'm just okay, the devs are really cool, so I encourage those. So I'll do one of each.
Sure, absolutely.
A game that I really want to play is The Gecko Gods, because I don't know what it is. It's a exploring game where you play as a lizard. That looks cool.
Yeah, sure.
The visuals are really, really solid. So that's really something that I want to play. There's some other stuff. Button City is really cute. I'm curious to see like where does that go. What is it? Is it Train of Thoughts or Tracks of Thoughts? I don't remember. Where you play as a little bug and you play cards to have conversation with people aboard the train. That looks really cool. That's a really cool system. And then there's like Spirit Swap, which I don't know if you've seen that game, but it's gorgeous. It's made by Soft Not Weak, which are really amazing people and also a worker co-op.
Oh, cool.
One of the other few. So yeah, I'm really excited about that. I'm really excited about Goodbye Volcano High. I know it wasn't part of the Awesome Direct, but still is a game I'm looking forward to. Again, co-op are a worker co-op, and they're actually here in Montreal, and they're really nice people. So I encourage everyone to go watch what they do. And then there's like WarioWare, which
of course,
that is my jam. That is a game I have played thoroughly in the past. I'm really excited. I was like, where is the WarioWare? I would love if they had like an extension with the Ring Fit ring.
Oh yeah,
that was
kind of brilliant.
Yo,
that would be amazing. But
now I'm just sad. Thanks.
Yeah, WarioWare is always one of those games that I never owned because I wouldn't play it much on my own. But friends of mine would always get it, and like it is such a fun game to play in a group because it's just so wild. And like Wario has been a favorite character of mine for ages. Like the kind of stuff that they got away with in some of those Wario Land games, especially what was it, Wario Land 4 on the GBA, is one of those games that I'm like, is this real?
Yeah.
Did Nintendo really make this? Because it's just so wild. And like I never got to play Shake It, but I heard that also did some crazy stuff. And so when he grew into this shitty game developer, essentially, like he's this criminal who wants to make shitty games and sell them, like the idea of the micro game was so clairvoyant at the time, right? Because think about all of the puzzle games and mobile games now that exist. Like this idea of micro games, Nintendo was like, oh my god, like they predicted the future almost, and it's just become this running gag that just has steamrolled. And the fact that in the new one you'll play as the WarioWare characters in the mini games and can do multiplayer, like I just think that's a fun evolution of that series, a series that I personally don't have a ton of investment in. Like I see that and go, that's cool. When am I getting another Wario Land? Because that's what I want. But I see the reason why that series exists, and I think it's a really fun way to interact with mini games versus your Mario parties and stuff, which are fun also in a group. But it's a very different kind of micro and mini game kind of compilation, right?
Yeah.
I feel like WarioWare pushes the humor first, right? And then the ingenuity and all that stuff also comes in a close second.
Yeah, and it's like what I've always found really interesting about WarioWare games is there's like a campaign, like a single player campaign. And it's always like you go into these themes around specific characters from the game and how they create games that kind of fit the theme, but also are super out there. Yeah, and also the music is really amazing. But yeah, it's a blast. It's a really, really fun game. So I'm super excited to see that. And of course, Breath of the Wild 2, which they showed practically nothing, except they were like, nah, you're not going to play as Zelda. And I'm a bit sad, but... Or maybe it's a bait. Maybe we will play as Zelda, and it's just I don't know. I would love to play as Zelda as a spellcaster, but it's
right. The only time we really played Zelda is Smash Brothers and the CDI. I think she's due.
Yeah, I would agree.
Yeah.
Princess Save Hyrule.
Yeah.
Yeah, the Breath of the Wild trailer, of course, invoked a ton of speculation, as it always does. People want to know how everything is, but like. My only concern is it is a direct sequel to a Zelda game, and direct sequels are tough to do for Zelda and haven't been done often. Like the best one I can think of is the spiritual successor to Link to the Past, which was Link Between Worlds, which was phenomenal.
Yeah.
And so I'm hoping that this gets the love and care. It doesn't just like, do I want more of Breath of the Wild? Sure. But I also need something more. I need something innovative. And it looks like we're going to have some kind of time control mechanic and rewinding time and going into the sky. It's very convenient that we're going to be in the sky in Breath of the Wild, and Skyward Sword's getting a re-release, like a lot of speculation there. And so I'm always excited about that kind of stuff. I mean, Jeff knows I've talked to death at this point. Like, the big thing that came out of the E3 for me is Metroid Dread. I'm a diehard Metroid fan. I've loved those games. Metroid Fusion is one of my all-time favorite games, and to get a direct sequel to one of my favorite Metroid games, a thing I thought we'd never get because of the cancellations and the rumors and Prime being always in the spotlight, makes me very excited. To know that also they've not given up on this version of this series, right? Because it could have been very easy for them to just stick with 3D. All games are 3D now, but they're not. And, you know, I, of course, started playing the Samus Returns remake by the same developer recently, and it makes me very excited for this new game. It just seems like Nintendo honoring the lineage, but still trying to do something new and different with this existing IP, which is what Nintendo does best when they do it.
Yeah, exactly. I think there's like a philosophy at Nintendo that they don't want to remake the same game just for this, like they already did. So if you want to play that game, just buy one of our re-releases that we do all the time.
Re-release it if you want that game again.
Exactly. Yeah. So, which is why I'm kind of super interested by, well, first of all, Dread looks amazing, and there's a strong horror component to it too. Yeah. So that seems
which really is building on Fusion, which also had a strong horror component.
Yeah, that seems really stressful. I like it.
Yeah, same. I'm not a big horror game guy, but like when Metroid does it, I'm like, yeah, come on, give it away.
I wasn't a big horror fan, and then I played Phasmophobia for like 100 hours, and then I'm a big fan of horror games.
Yeah, I hear that.
Yeah, so basically, what I'm excited about Breath of the Wild 2 is that the first one was like they really tried something. They really were super innovative with the franchise. They tried different things, like the dungeons that kind of broke into little bits, which are shrines, and there are those big puzzle blocks, but that are kind of short and kind of easy, and all of the bosses are the same, which is something that's kind of a minus for everyone that played it.
Yeah.
And there are also other things that they tried, like weapon destructibility and stuff like that.
Yep.
So I'm really curious to see how they take everything that went really well with Breath of the Wild and build upon that with the same engine and stuff. And also like more traversal options. That's more exactly. That's like the best thing they could do. And they've shown that it's the case. They have more traversal options. So I'm really curious to see how that goes. It's a really interesting game, Breath of the Wild, because there's a lot of space. There's like comparing to other open worlds where you've got like a bunch of markers on your map. Breath of the Wild is just basically there's a lot of room to like just be there with your paraglider and look at stuff, and it's just the level design is witchcraft because it is like wherever you are, there's always something that's visually interesting and that's kind of calling to you, and that is witchcraft. That's like, how the hell did they do this? So I don't think they'll mess up the second one.
I don't think so either. I think it's in good hands. And I do want to put my foot down here, and no one else has to. But the weapon degradation is integral to that goddamn game. And if you're in the discourse of saying that they should remove it, you don't understand why that game is good. I'm sorry. Like, the thing about Breath of the Wild, the reason it needs that destructibility is because you find so much stuff, and the game is about discovery. The discovery of new weapons would be meaningless if they didn't break. And that they give you the Master Sword later that doesn't run out of, eventually you can power it up so it doesn't run out of energy and is an unlimited weapon, is a reward for going through all that other discoveries, like the ultimate discovery. But there are still discoverable weapons that are more powerful than it, that just have less, I don't know. I see the durability discourse again after Breath of the Wild 2, and it just makes me angry because you proved to me you don't understand why that game is good, which is fine. If you don't like it, it's fine, but that's core to that game.
Not every game needs it, but Breath of the Wild needed it.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, my hot take about that discourse is that you could absolutely remove the combat from Breath of the Wild, and it would probably be a better game. In my opinion, if you took those resources, removed combat, and did something else with it, be more creative with the shrines, new tools to play with. In my opinion, the game would be, because the one thing that I find kind of bland in Breath of the Wild is the combat. Like, you approach a few camps, it's kind of fun. You fight a few Linnels, but there's like not a lot of enemy variety, and I don't want more because the game doesn't need more combat or more like it's a nice change of pace, but I feel like it could be easily replaced with, well, not easily, but replaced with something else. But I feel like combat is also integral to the franchise, so it's a harder thing to do. But my hot take is that the game would be actually better without the combat element. But that's my opinion.
And I'm often a big fan, as an outside observer, but fervent fan of video games and of design, that if something happens less, but with either greater detail or greater care, it matters more, you can get more into it. There have been combat moments throughout all the 3D Legend of Zelda games where that idea of the combat just clicks and is amazing. And you're like, you didn't realize you were holding your breath until the battle was over kind of thing. But yeah, when it kind of becomes a bit of, well, you just swing your sword because that's what you do. I loved avoiding enemies in Breath of the Wild far more than I enjoyed attacking them.
Yeah.
And there's something to be done with that. And again, if combat was really only for divine beasts or for something like that, it would mean a little more, and it could have that extra bit of care and not have to be a blanket statement.
Yeah, I think Breath of the Wild fails when it tries to be Zelda, I think, a lot. Like, what I mean by that is, like,
Zelda.
The shrine, people who wanted a traditional Zelda game complained about the shrines. However, people who loved Breath of the Wild loved the shrines and complained about the divine beasts. And I thought the design of the divine beasts were great, but they were forcing you to do dungeons in a game that was not designed for dungeon crawling. It was designed for exploration. And I think I'd agree with you, Emile, in the fact that, like, if there was less combat or no combat and they rethought what the divine beasts meant and what the shrines mean, which they're hopefully going to do in the new game, like, I think that's where this will succeed. Because, like, my biggest complaint about Breath of the Wild is that the music is almost non-existent, which is the point, right? There are scored moments, but it's meant to feel open and natural. And there's no soundtrack. I mean, for most people anyway, music isn't playing around you all the time. Could be. I don't know. You do you. But, like, that was my greatest failing, is I love Zelda's music. I've loved the compositions over the years, and there just wasn't much in Breath of the Wild. But again, it was meant to be more ambient, which was the point. And I think if they leaned into that more, I have complicated feelings about Breath of the Wild because I love it as a game, but I don't love it as part of the Zelda franchise because I feel like everything it's trying to do is the antithesis of Zelda, which is the point, right? There's no hook shot. There's no, mag boots. There's no, there are sub weapons, but they're all the Sheikah slate, right?
Yeah.
And I think that goes against Zelda, which is okay. And it's okay to do that within the franchise, but they have to go further. And I think you're right. Less combat, more puzzle solving, more thinking and exploration is where Breath of the Wild will shine specifically.
Yeah, and I think, like, if you were to find new tools throughout the game, maybe that would mean that you can't solve every shrine at the beginning, or maybe that some shrines become easier over time as you discover new tools. And that would be like an interesting dynamic to explore, to go into the Divine Beast, have some puzzling and stuff, and then come out of that with a new tool. Or you could actually do what Zelda does and discover the new tool at the beginning of the Divine Beast, try to use it, you learn how to use it during the Divine Beast, and then come out with this amazing new thing. That could absolutely work. But I kind of disagree about, like, because I feel like the fact that it is Zelda and that the world building is Zelda makes it much, much more impactful.
That's true.
I'm with you.
I would agree with that.
Because, as you said, there's not a lot of music, but the Breath of the Wild soundtrack is kind of my favorite soundtrack of all the Zelda games. Because when you reach this, like, a safe place or a hub or a village, and then the music hits you, you're like, oh my god. Like, when you reach, like, spoilers ahead, if you reach Rito Village and then that song starts to play, it's just, and then it's like lightly remade in a different beat and different instruments, and it just fits really, really, really well. And then you'll end up chilling there a bit, do a bit of side quests, and then you'll get on with your life. And I really love the kind of really ambient, really, it's actually like Breath of the Wild is super inspired by, like, Princess Mononoke or other Ghibli movies. So the, like,
as hell.
The really, like, ambient sounds with a few piano notes, and you're just looking at grass for miles is really, it's kind of my vibe. I really enjoyed that part of Breath of the Wild. I think it's a matter of like you can't conserve the level of intensity. Like for example, if you're like playing Ocarina of Time and then you're in aerial fields or plains, I don't remember.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then the music starts playing and it's really intense, but you'll be there for like 2-3 minutes tops because you're basically just going from one place to another. While in Breath of the Wild, you've got this gigantic land. You can't have this level of intensity all the time. It becomes...
That's true.
Yeah, it's not an NES game. You don't need the same loop playing. I'm very much with you, Emile, on these things. Like, I love music. I love music so much. That my degree is in music, like all these things. But the fact that Breath of the Wild is kind of built on an after the end kind of thing. It's built on you failed. And now what are you going to do about it? It adds to that. And then, when you get to those points of civilization, it's like, oh, other signs of that, other things of that. And I'm also somebody where the tools don't define Legend of Zelda. Those are just things.
Yeah.
And so I don't care if there's hook shots or mag boots or the cane that creates blocks. I can't remember the name of it. Whatever it is, because I'm worked up right now and I'm not remembering details. But I do think it'd be very interesting, like kind of just off of what you both are saying, I think it'd be super interesting if tools degraded. Like you are finding ancient tools. They only last so long. The difficulty there is you then have to design puzzles that can be assailed in many different ways.
Yeah.
Right.
But it's not just like, I'm a hook shot everything. Can you though? Maybe you can take them to somebody to repair them, but you only get so much out of it. Yeah. And so you have to continue to adapt and survive and explore.
That's a great idea. Also, I realize after the fact that the reason climbing is impactful is because you don't have a hook shot, right? You have stamina, and if you had a hook shot, it would remove it. That said, the climbing can be slow on that giant mountain I want to climb that I'm an idiot for wanting to climb so early on, but that's more my fault than the game's fault.
That's all of us.
Yeah.
We've spent years being told by games, can't climb that. That's the boundary. Now we can.
Yeah, and I don't think anything that I said is inherently wrong with Zelda. I think mostly it's my preference versus what you prefer.
Exactly.
And I think that's the magic of the Zelda franchise among a lot of others, right? Like Mario, for the most part, you love or hate most of his catalog, right? With the exception of Sunshine, which everyone just likes to hate on. For the most part, you either like the Mario catalog or you don't. You know, I would say the same with Metroid for the most part, right? If you like one of the Metroid games, you will likely like a lot of the Metroid games. I feel like Zelda is one of the more divisive franchises because game to game they're always trying something different, and I think that's what's brilliant about them. Like I know a lot of folks don't like Skyward Sword. I've never played it. I'm going to play it for the first time when the re-release comes out, the remaster. But I know a lot of folks didn't like it because it felt samey. But it only felt samey because it followed up Twilight Princess, which was one of the most visually diverse Zeldas of the time.
Yeah.
It had shape shifting, which had never really existed in that way in Zelda. So like, I think that's to Zelda's detriment and success, is that it will always be trying wildly new things. And if you come to Zelda expecting dungeon crawling and that's it, or very static puzzles, you're kind of missing the point of Zelda to a degree.
Yeah.
With the CDI exception, because those games are just terrible and should never be acknowledged. But beyond that, I'm so glad that you got to join us, Emile. This has been such a great conversation. I'm so excited to see the future success of Sally. I'm putting it out there. It's going to be a huge success. But please, before we wrap up, why don't you tell folks where they can find you online and where they can find everything about Sally and how they can follow the progress of this incredible game?
Okay, so I'm on Twitter at BaconDrop. So I guess it'll be spelled out somewhere in the description of the podcast.
Yeah,
anyway,
for sure. In the show notes,
we'll link to it. Yeah.
All right. And you can you can actually follow the progress of Sally through our YouTube channel that we talked earlier, through our series that's called Game Dev Tales. The channel is called Lucid Tales. You can't miss it. You just type Sally Lucid Tales and probably there'll be a link too. And you can also follow us on Twitter at Co-op Lucid Tales. And that's our main channels. That's what we do.
And of course, I'm assuming there is no release date for Sally quite yet, but do you have there's no projected timeline, right? You don't even have a year yet. It's in the works.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Cool. All right. Well, we will wait with bated breath. We'll be very excited to bring you back when we have a release date maybe to announce, and we'll share it with the world and talk more about Sally. But go follow it on all the places you can find it. Check out the trailer. It's definitely worth your time. It looks like it's going to be a wonderful game.
And be sure to check out the other videos on Lucid Tales' YouTube page, because there's a lot of fun stuff about the Unreal Engine and about games. Can you think of other ways to crash the Unreal Engine? I don't know. Let them know. And let us know what you think of this episode, previous episodes, and what you think we should do for future episodes, topics we should cover, guests we should have on the show. You can contact us at our Twitter and at Gmail, Fun and Games Pod for both of them. Also, you can go to certainpov.com to check out some of our other fantastic shows on the network, as well as a permanent link to our Discord, where we talk about gaming, comics, movies, all sorts of wonderful bits of culture and nerdery aplenty, and we'd love to hear from all of you about that. And one more time, Emile, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for sharing a game that I'm very excited to see, and thank you for creating a space of transparency and accountability for development, other development studios, and for us as gamers as well.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really a blast. I hope we can do that again, because you're all lovely, and it was really fun just chatting with you.
Well, thank you. Yes, it was lovely chatting with you as well. Also, before we go, if you have an opportunity, please go to your podcast platform of choice and give us a 5-star rating and tell us what you love about the show. We'd love to hear from you. Please stay in contact. Definitely, again, check out all the stuff that we talked about today and stay in contact.
Whether it's on YouTube comments, in Discord, Twitter, wherever it is, we want to hear from you, because this is a conversation. Thank you for being a part of it. I'm Jeff Moonen.
And I'm Matt, a.k.a. Stormageddon.
And happy gaming.
Are you tired of watching your beloved characters being tortured by careless authors?
Are you sick of feeling like they could have swapped out all of the painful action and the plot would remain untouched? Subscribe to Books That Burn, the fortnightly book review podcast focusing on fictional depictions of trauma.
We assume that the characters' reactions are reasonable and focus on how badly or well they were served by their authors.
Join us for our minor character spotlights, main character discussions, and favorite non-traumatic things in the dark books we love.
Find us on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you get your podcasts.
CPOV. CertainPOV.com.